My name is Daniel Reynolds. I'm 54 years old. And up until last year, most people who knew me thought I lived a modest, quiet life. Maybe a little withdrawn, maybe a little too private. That's because they didn't know the truth. Not about my past. Not about my family. And definitely not about what I've done in the shadows for the last 12 years. I was 5 years old when my mother died. Car accident. One of those freak highway collisions in the rain that took her instantly. I remember the phone call my dad got. The way he dropped the phone. The way he fell to his knees. The way he didn't look at me once for the next 3 hours. She was gone and so was I, at least to him. 6 months later, Caroline moved in. She was younger, prettier in the conventional sense, and from a well-respected family at our church. To outsiders, she was warm and sweet, always smiling and bringing casseroles to bake sales. But at home she had a look she gave me like I was mold on her freshly baked pie. I was 7 when she married my dad. I still remember the ceremony. Jeremy, her son from a previous marriage, was the ring bearer. I sat in the third pew alone. It didn't take long for things to shift. Suddenly I wasn't Daniel. I was him, or that boy. Dinner plates were set for 3. Dad, Caroline, Jeremy. Mine was left in the microwave if I was lucky. Caroline told my dad I made her uncomfortable. That I looked too much like her. He didn't ask what she meant. He just nodded. Jeremy was everything I wasn't allowed to be. Talkative. Messy. Rebellious. But when he drew crayon scribbles on the walls, it was creative expression. When I forgot to make my bed, I was lazy like your mother. One time I broke a glass trying to help with dishes. Caroline slapped me so hard I couldn't hear out of one ear for 2 days. When my dad came home and saw the red mark, she said I'd fallen off my bike. He didn't ask questions. He never asked questions. The worst part wasn't the punishments. It was the erasure. There were no photos of my mother in the house after Caroline moved in. None. Not even in the attic. She'd made sure of it. When I asked where they went, Dad said, "It's just better not to live in the past." At 10 years old, I started keeping a folded photo of my mom, one I'd secretly saved from an old scrapbook, in my sock drawer hidden between rolled-up socks and paper clips. The first time I understood what being forgotten really meant was Jeremy's 10th birthday. Caroline threw a huge party. Balloons. A bounce house. Neighbors from the whole block. I spent 2 weeks mowing lawns after school so I could buy Jeremy a baseball glove. He'd been talking about it nonstop. I wrapped it carefully and wrote a little card, "To the best brother I've got." I was proud. Nervous even. But when I walked up to the kitchen with the gift, Caroline looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't ruin his party. Just go to your room." I watched from my bedroom window as Jeremy opened other gifts. He never got mine. I never gave it. By the time I was in high school, I was almost entirely self-sufficient. I packed my own lunch, got myself to school, worked evenings bagging groceries. One time my chemistry teacher called home to talk about how well I was doing. Caroline told him, "Oh, you must be confusing him with Jeremy." She wasn't joking. That he was there. Physically. That's about it. He'd hum to himself while fixing the sink or occasionally mumble, "Hey champ," if we passed in the hallway. But that was it. No hugs. No heart-to-hearts. He was a ghost who still paid the utility bills. Senior year, I got accepted to a state college on a partial scholarship. It wasn't Ivy League, but it was solid, and it was mine. I printed the acceptance letter and put it on the fridge. The next morning it was gone. When I asked about it, Caroline said, "It fell." I threw it out. "Don't leave your mess lying around." Dad's only comment? "Well, that's great, son. But we can't help you with tuition. Things are tight around here." That was the last night I spent in that house. I packed a duffel bag, took the bus to campus early, and never looked back. I remember sitting on a mattress on the floor of my shared dorm, staring at the ceiling fan, thinking this is my real start. This is where I begin. But what I didn't know then was that even in that small, dusty dorm room, I was still being followed by the shadow of being unwanted. That everything I built would come from that quiet, hollow ache. And that one day they'd all look at me again. But this time not as the boy they ignored, but as the man who made sure they survived, even when they didn't deserve it. College was tough. I had no car, no savings, and no safety net. Most weekends my classmates were out drinking, tailgating, having lives. I was folding clothes in the back room of a laundromat or delivering pizzas to dorms I couldn't afford to live in. My roommates thought I was antisocial, but really I was just exhausted. I kept a spreadsheet taped inside my closet door. Rent, books, utilities, peanut butter, ramen. Every dollar had a name. Every mistake meant skipping a meal. No one from home called. Not once. Not even on my birthday. And part of me had stopped expecting them to. I told myself, "You're on your own now, Daniel. No one's coming to save you. So do it yourself." And I did. Slowly. Painfully. Second semester of sophomore year, I got a letter from my mother's sister. My Aunt Lorraine. I hadn't seen her in over a decade. She invited me to visit her in Madison, Wisconsin. Just for a weekend. Said she had something I needed to see. I scraped together enough gas money and borrowed a classmate's rusty Buick to make the drive. I didn't know what to expect. Honestly, I thought maybe she'd found an old photo album or a recipe box from my mom. But what she handed me changed everything. It was a sealed envelope, yellowed at the edges. My name written in my mother's cursive. For Daniel. When he's ready. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter. And a trust agreement. My mother had set up a fund before she died. A small but significant trust in my name, tied to a land investment she'd made with a friend from college. Apparently, she had been more financially savvy than anyone gave her credit for. After she passed, Lorraine became the silent executor, following my mother's last wish. Do not tell Daniel until he is grown and until he is strong enough to carry it. The trust had grown. What started as a modest investment had multiplied. Not millions, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to change everything if I used it right. I sat on Lorraine's back porch with a cup of tea I hadn't touched, staring at numbers I couldn't process. $482,000. I practiced, untouched. Waiting. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just whispered. She believed in me. She knew. I didn't touch the money for nearly a year. Instead, I finished school the way I started. Scraping, saving, working. But I read. I studied investment books, subscribed to business podcasts, shadowed my economics professor. I started to understand things like compounding, risk tolerance, ROI. I didn't want to waste what she left me. I wanted to grow it, earn it, deserve it. After graduation, while Jeremy was busy launching a custom furniture company funded by Dad's retirement savings, I took $40,000 from the trust and started a vending machine business. Not glamorous, but profitable. Within a year, I doubled the investment. I reinvested, expanded. By year 3, I had 36 machines across 2 counties. That's when I learned about franchises. Fast food. Convenience. Low overhead, high reward if you play it right. I bought into a sandwich chain in Missouri. Managed it myself. Lived above the shop. Cleaned toilets at 1 a.m. when staff didn't show. Handed out flyers during lunch rush. The profits weren't insane, but they were steady. I sold it 3 years later at a 5x return. And I just kept going. Meanwhile, I'd occasionally hear from old classmates. Weddings. Baby announcements. The occasional message from someone saying, "Your dad's still around, huh?" Or, "Jeremy's doing well, opened another showroom." I never responded. I didn't need to. What people didn't know was that I'd started a small private equity group, Foundation 3. I built it with a business partner from Milwaukee, someone who'd grown up in the foster system and knew all about starting from nothing. We focused on education startups, blue-collar tech, and community investment. Nothing sexy, but it was stable, scalable, and I still hadn't touched the full trust. I'd grown past it, but I kept it, like a memory of her belief in me. A lighthouse I never turned off. Then one day, out of nowhere, my lawyer called. "Daniel," he said, "we've been approached for a small property lease agreement. It's for a family home. Looks like the mortgage has defaulted. Apparently, the trust technically owns the lien, from some maneuver back in 1998. My stomach dropped. It was my childhood home. Turns out, my mother had structured the trust to indirectly hold collateral on the house, through a separate shell company in case Caroline tried to remortgage it. Which she did. Twice. And failed to repay. That house, the one I was erased from, was now mine. Quietly. On paper. Wiggly. I didn't evict them. I didn't raise the rent. I just paid it off. Swallowed the irony. And left it alone. But from that moment on, something in me shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. Quietly. Systematically. And no Not Dad, not Caroline, not Jeremy had any idea. Until they did. I could have walked away completely. Bought a cabin in Montana, changed my number, lived out the rest of my life with peace and anonymity. But I didn't. Part of me, maybe the part still clutching that old photo of my mother, couldn't just disappear. So I stayed involved. Silently. Invisibly. When I learned Dad had been falling behind on his mortgage, I stepped in, through a third-party company I owned. We structured a refinance plan that cut his interest rate in half. The letters came with a generic name and logo. Nothing traceable to me. Just better terms and no questions asked. The payments were automated. He never missed another one. Caroline was diagnosed with early-stage lymphoma a few years later. Treatment was expensive. Insurance barely covered anything. I paid her medical bills in full under an anonymous donation fund tied to a cancer research foundation. I didn't send a card. I didn't need thanks. Just receipts forwarded to my office. Jeremy was a different story. He'd taken Dad's help and blown it on business ventures that looked good on Instagram but bled money behind the scenes. High-end custom furniture. Designer retail pop-ups. At one point he started a bespoke lifestyle line. Whatever the hell that meant. Eventually he needed capital. Real capital. He applied for a private business loan. The request landed on my desk. He had no idea Foundation 3 was mine. I read through the pitch deck like any other. It was flashy, filled with buzzwords, no financial backbone. But he had assets, an ego, and desperation. We offered him a deal, 49% equity in exchange for a mid-sized investment under tight terms. He took it. He signed the papers. I signed them too. It was the first time in decades I'd written my name next to his. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I just watched as his company grew, on the surface, and quietly funneled profits into my firm's portfolio. I owned nearly half of his company. And he had no idea. That was the point. I didn't want revenge. I wanted power. The kind they'd never understand. The kind that doesn't come with yelling or screaming or pointing fingers. Just quiet, calculated control. Then came the funeral. Dad's mother, my grandmother, passed away. I hadn't seen her in over 20 years. I debated whether to go. But something in me said I had to. Closure maybe. The church looked exactly the same. Same pews. Same dusty hymnals. Same smell of lemon polish and regret. I walked in alone in a tailored gray suit, no name tag. I sat in the back. Caroline and Jeremy didn't even turn around. Dad looked at me once, just once, and then turned away. When it was time to read the will, we gathered in the church office. The lawyer opened the envelope. To my daughter-in-law Caroline, I leave the family jewelry and antique china set. To my grandson Jeremy, I leave the family car and my husband's watch. The lawyer paused. And to Daniel. He looked confused. Shuffled papers. There is no designation. Silence. Caroline cleared her throat. Jeremy smirked. Dad just stared at the floor. There was. The final erasure. Even in death they found a way to make sure I didn't exist. But what they didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that the house they all lived in, the cars they drove, the loans they depended on, all had my fingerprints on them. Not out of love. Not anymore. Out of control. And soon the world would see it too. It was supposed to be just another quiet quarter. Numbers were up. Foundation 3 had launched a new initiative funding trade schools in under-resourced areas. I wasn't looking for attention. I never had. That's probably why I didn't see it coming. One morning my assistant dropped a manila envelope on my desk. "You've been nominated," she said, raising an eyebrow. I opened it. The National Builders Gala. A televised event honoring business leaders who made long-term community impact. It wasn't flashy like the Fortune 500 galas. It wasn't about yachts and press tours. It was about quiet changemakers. They called it the Night of the Silent Hands. I didn't want to go. But my mentor, Ji-hyun, the Korean-American investor who taught me how to hold power without holding grudges, convinced me. "You've built bridges with your own scars," she told me. "Let them see what a real architect looks like." So I went. Black tuxedo. No entourage. No name tag. Just me. The gala was hosted in Chicago, streamed live on PBS. Red carpet outside the venue. Not the Hollywood kind. More like warm lights, vintage jazz, and a lot of handshakes with people who remembered what it meant to work for something. They sat me near the stage. As the host read out the list of honorees, I noticed a few familiar faces in the crowd. Business leaders I'd partnered with. Journalists. And then farther back I saw them. Caroline. Jeremy. My father. Of course they were there. Jeremy's company, our company, had recently been profiled in a local paper as a rising star in sustainable retail. He must have scored an invitation and brought them along for the prestige. I don't think they recognized me at first. Confident. The man on stage wasn't the skinny boy they once told to eat in the garage. Then the host said my name. And now, she smiled, our final honoree of the evening. A man who prefers to work behind the scenes, but whose impact speaks volumes, Daniel Reynolds. The room applauded. Not a thunderous roar but genuine. Respectful. I stood, buttoned my jacket and walked slowly to the stage. I saw Caroline's eyes narrow. Jeremy's jaw dropped. Dad looked like he'd been hit by a train. I took the mic. I never expected to be here, I said, voice steady. I come from a background where silence was survival. Where success wasn't expected and failure was assumed. I've learned to build quietly. Not for praise. Not for recognition. But because I couldn't afford to wait for permission. Pause. I've funded over 40 businesses. Paid off over a dozen family mortgages. Some belonging to people who still don't know it. I've helped send kids to college, build school libraries and rescue small shops from collapse. But more than anything, I've learned that dignity doesn't always come from being seen. Sometimes it comes from choosing who gets to see you. The audience stood. Applause echoed. Somewhere in the back, Caroline sat frozen, lips pressed white. Jeremy stared straight ahead, trying to process what just happened. My father looked down, clutching his program like a lifeline. After the ceremony, I made my way toward the exit. Reporters asked for quotes. I declined. I didn't need to explain. But Jeremy found me. He grabbed my arm. You're Foundation 3? I looked him dead in the eye. You signed the deal, Jeremy. You never read the footnotes. He stammered something, but I didn't stay to hear it. That night, Caroline posted on Facebook. Some people forget who changed their diapers. Some people forget who kept their lights on. Success without gratitude is just another form of failure. The comments blew up. People debated for days. Some praised me. Others accused me of arrogance, of pettiness, of abandonment. But I didn't answer. Because when you've spent your entire life being erased, choosing when and how to speak is the ultimate power. A week passed. Then another. After the gala, I disappeared again. Back to my office, my routines, my silence. I didn't return Jeremy's texts. I didn't reply to the email Caroline sent titled, "Let's Talk." I let the storm pass. I let them sit in the echo of a truth they had refused to see for a lifetime. But the call came anyway. It was my father. Late at night, long after most people had gone to bed. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to. Maybe curiosity. Maybe weakness. Daniel. His voice cracked like dry wood. I said nothing. I saw you. At the gala. His breathing was heavy. I didn't know. We didn't know. You've done all of that. So I said nothing. Your mother, he said, voice breaking. If she could see you now. I stopped him right there. Don't bring her into this, Dad. Silence. I'm sorry, he whispered. But sorry is a strange word. Comes so late. So thin. Like wrapping a gunshot wound in a tissue. You watched them push me away, I said, voice flat. You watched Caroline turn me into a ghost. And you helped her. I didn't know how to stop it, he murmured. You didn't try. Another silence. The kind that fills a room even through a phone line. I want to make it right, he said. I want to see you. Please. I told him I'd think about it. But I already knew the answer. The next day I drove to the house. The one I now technically owned. The front yard looked exactly the same. Peeling paint, the same overgrown rose bushes my mother had planted decades ago. I parked across the street and just sat. Watching. A boy rode by on his bike. A neighbor watered his lawn. Somewhere inside I saw movement in the window. Caroline probably closing the curtains. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. Instead I pulled out a handwritten letter. Folded it. Slipped it into the mailbox. Dad, you said you want to make it right. But some things can't be fixed. They can only be left behind. I don't hate you. That would be too easy. I pity you. I pity the years you lost being silent. I pity the moments you could have stood up but chose comfort over courage. I'm not coming back. But I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. Daniel. I stood there for a moment, wind brushing past my coat, eyes stinging. Then I turned, walked back to my car and left. The mailbox stayed shut. That evening I visited my mother's grave. I hadn't been in years. Not since I'd learned about the trust. The stone was simple. Her name. Her dates. A short inscription, she shined quietly. I knelt, brushing away some leaves. I told her everything. About the gala. The letter. Jeremy's company. The money. The silence. And then I said thank you. Because in the end she was the only one who had believed in me before anyone else did. The next week Caroline passed away. I paid for the funeral. Anonymously. Jeremy tried to contact me several times after that. One message stood out. I don't know if I ever deserved to be your brother. But I know now how much I owed you. I'm sorry. For all of it. I read it once. Then deleted it. I didn't need his apology. Because the truth is, healing doesn't always look like hugs or holiday dinners. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like choosing your own peace over someone else's redemption arc. I don't know if I'll ever see my father again. I doubt it. And that's okay. Because I've already buried the version of him that could have been something more. I live in a small place now. Quiet. Near water. I don't own flashy things. But I sleep well. And I wake up knowing that the boy they tried to erase became the man who wrote the story. On his own terms. Some people are born into families that love them unconditionally. Others have to survive the ones that don't. This story isn't just about success. It's about silence. It's about how the deepest wounds are the ones nobody sees. Until the day they bloom into something undeniable. So I'll ask you this. Have you ever been the invisible one in your family? The quiet sibling? The forgotten child? And if you were given the chance, would you forgive them? Leave your answer in the comments. Yes or no? And if this story moved you even a little, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters. We're just getting started.